Okay, so I want to talk about intermittent fasting and the whole HPA axis dysregulation as regards specifically complex PTSD and PTSD, right? In those kinds of states where the whole frickin' HPA axis is thrown off, is it a good idea to do something like intermittently fast? That is the question. So I happened to look at a few forums where discussions were being had about adrenal fatigue, which is when it's a similar state to what happens with the pancreas when you're insulin resistant. So the adrenals get tired because so much is being demanded of them, and this could happen if your HPA axis is thrown off in a complex PTSD kind of scenario, right? This is probably one of the things that is likely to be occurring. And so the idea on some of the forums was, look, you're going to strain the adrenals more, put more stress on them by doing this intermittent fasting thing. And in so doing, blood sugars are going to be even more of a hot mess, as would the hormonal situation. Okay? That was one of the criticisms raised. I disagree. And here's why. I think intermittent fasting is likely to be, in most cases, now there could be a few exceptions to this, but in most cases, a good idea if we're talking about HPA axis dysregulation and complex PTSD. Let me tell you why. What happens when you intermittent fast is that you do cause the liver to have to secrete glucagon to maintain blood sugar, right? It's the one that opposes insulin. And much of the research with intermittent fasting indicates that over time, intermittent fasting actually stabilizes blood sugars, particularly in states where you have insulin resistance occurring. In fact, the guy out of the UK, now I'm drawing a blank on his name, the fast diet guy. I've linked to him before. I will link to him again. That guy, he basically, he's a type 2 insulin resistant diabetic. That was partly why he got into this whole idea of intermittent fasting for himself on a personal level, and then has been spreading this idea. He's a physician and also a journalist, that kind of thing. But he talks about utilizing it to actually stabilize blood sugars. And the truth of the matter is that is what it does in a longer term scenario. But in the initial beginning of trying intermittent fasting, there is something that occurs that I'm going to give you a label for from naturopathic medicine called a therapeutic aggravation. What you have is things get worse before they get better. That can happen in any really good therapy that's ultimately not suppressive in nature. What do I mean by that? Well, let me give you an example from the exercise world, since that is a world I like to inhabit. Let's pretend you're a couch potato, and all of a sudden you get the great idea to get back to the gym. Like, hey, I'm going to do whatever, HII, high intensity interval training, or I'm going to do, whatever. It doesn't matter what you're going to do. You're going to get in the gym, and you're going to actually get moving again from the couch. Okay. What is likely to happen to almost everybody in this scenario? Well, first of all, it's going to hurt before it gets better, right? Initially, that day after your first workout, you're going to feel sore. You're going to think, oh my goodness, why did I do that? Whoa. Everything's going to hurt. And, okay, maybe not everything. Maybe there's a muscle that you forgot to do and it's not going to hurt. But it is likely that you are going to suffer what we would label a therapeutic aggravation. Things get worse before they get better. Now, down the road, if you maintain your workout schedule and keep going to the gym, over time, what will happen? You will see that even the same level of exercise is not going to cause you to be sore. In fact, you can amp it up 10-fold, 20-fold, 30-fold, which you will do over time, and see that you're not in the least bit sore because you've reached a new level of fitness, of healing. And so in that scenario, I would label those initial days as a therapeutic aggravation. That's the analogy. Things get worse before they get better, and you have to persist through them. It is the same thing on a physical level in terms of detoxing, right? Your body is wise. If you get exposed, in fact, most of us are exposed in our lifetimes to all sorts of toxins. It's part of just living on the planet. So you get exposed to all sorts of stuff, whether it be, persistent organic pollutants in the form of fat-soluble toxins, everything that you get exposed to. Your body, in trying to minimize the damage, throws it into slowly metabolizing spots. So for example, if you have fat-soluble toxins, you often throw them into fat cells. Because one, you don't want this stuff floating around the blood. It's not good. I mean, it's going to wreak havoc. So you minimize the damage by kind of putting it behind, putting it off in the fat cells. And then what happens when you go to try to clear it, to detox, there is a therapeutic aggravation because it has to get into the blood for the most part in order to get to the exit route of being excreted through your poop or your pee or your skin or your lungs, depending on how you're going to get rid of this toxin. And so in that process, when it's in the blood, it's going to exacerbate things. You're going to have more symptoms of like an acute toxicity. It's part of the path to healing. It's a therapeutic aggravation because ultimately your goal is to get it out of your body. But in the process of healing, it has to get into the blood to get to the exit route. So thus you have a therapeutic aggravation. This happens on a mental emotional level. You've been in a toxic relationship. You enter therapy, and in therapy, you're processing, you're talking to someone about the crap that happened to you. And sometimes in that the process itself can be traumatic. You can have an uppage of your symptoms where you feel worse. You feel more sad because all of a sudden it's hitting you. Wait, this person didn't really love me. Or they even traumatized me and I didn't actually, recognize it because I threw it into the fat cells so I wouldn't have to see it in the blood, right? Similar phenomenon. And then as you break from your delusion of thinking, wait, this is such a great relationship, you divorce the narcissist, and now you're, as you're processing, it has to get into your blood to get out through the exit route. So now you're acutely aware of all the crap that happened to you, and it doesn't necessarily feel good to think of it this way. But it's part of the healing process. Same idea. So, back to the intermittent fasting piece. There is a period of time when you begin intermittent fasting where you see this same phenomenon. You have a therapeutic aggravation. Things get worse. Blood sugars might be a little more wonky than they were in that period when you first start intermittent fast. What's it like? It's the liver is having to step up to the plate. You're having to say, you got to produce some glucagon so we can stabilize these blood sugars. Up to this point, I have allowed you to be lax in your production, or you haven't done such a good job stabilizing, but guess what? We're going to amp up the muscleage, liver, and you got to do your crap. You got to help get rid of the crap. So help me help you, right? It's a naturopathic aggravation. A therapeutic aggravation, sorry. Not just naturopathic. This could happen in other scenarios as well. So all that to say, I think ultimately, if we look at the constellation of things that happens with intermittent fasting, and the unique symptoms of PTSD, of the HPA axis being thrown off, it is a no-brainer. It increases BDNF, which of course that's another goal in trying to stabilize the HPA axis. We want to increase BDNF. We want to make sure blood sugars are under control because we're at an increased risk of becoming diabetic because we have PTSD. Wait, it does address insulin resistance, and it stabilizes blood sugars. It also decreases abdominal obesity. I mean, just go down the list of stuff that the benefits, health benefits of intermittent fasting, match them up with what you have going on with complex PTSD and HPA axis dysregulation. Like cures like. You got the recipe right there with intermittent fasting. So, yes, I understand the concern with the adrenal fatigue folk thinking, okay, are we going to make things worse? They're not. That's short-sighted. They're looking at this window of this acute period of time where there's a therapeutic aggravation. And if you look long-term and you persist through that, you will see changes with the blood sugar being more stabilized. Are there exceptions to that? Perhaps. Perhaps there are people who, for them, they are so incredibly dysregulated that maybe that could be a scenario where it would be contraindicated. But given a few parameters like making sure you're supporting the adrenals in the process of trying to stabilize, using intermittent fasting to stabilize the HPA axis, thinking in terms of, increasing the vitamin C, omega-3s, adaptogenic herbs, I mean, it's a no-brainer. Intermittently fast. So that's my opinion. Thanks for tuning in. Let me know what you think. What's your opinion of intermittent fasting and HPA axis dysregulation? Do you have PTSD, complex PTSD? Have you used it? What happened for you? Would love to hear. Post it in the comments below. I will try to respond to any and all comments. Okay, I can't promise that, but that's the goal. Thanks for tuning in. Adios.